Hi again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wrestling Inc. Weekly. I'm Raj Giri of WrestlingINC.com, and joining me as always, he's a TV producer and writer and is a former WWE Creative executive as well as the founder of Major League Wrestling, Court Bauer. Court, how are things going on your end?
Oh, pretty good. Just freezing here. I always say that every week. It's freezing here in New York, but it's literally like 1 degree today. So, yeah, it's pretty nasty out there. Keeping inside, keeping warm. How about yourself?
Yikes! Yeah. Stay warm. It's been the 60s up here, so it's been pretty nice.
Oh my God!
I have a feeling the worst is about to come.
Why can't we get some of that global warming out our way, man? It's like, you know, we got the heat pumping, and you can feel it through the windows with the wind just blasting. It just comes through. It is nasty, man. My dog wouldn't even go outside. Looked at me, walked right back in. Wouldn't even acknowledge it. No, sold me on it.
Jeez, well, it's a big week in the wrestling world. Did you get a chance to watch all of Raw last Monday night?
I did. It was a weird show because it felt to me like they were really excited about the Las Vegas Raw next week. And yeah, they also have a pay-per-view that they kind of sold you on the main event, and then there's everything else. Obviously, The Rock's going to be the calling card, it's going to sell the show. I get that. To that point, it's like you've been promoting it in commercial form forever with The Rock, and I think everyone knows The Rock's going to be wrestling, and it's a very simple build. I would have liked more bumps in the road and more interesting hooks and stuff than what they've done with Rock and Punk, but I think they really took a lot away from what could have been a cool build to the Royal Rumble. I mean, I don't care if there's no mystery men in it, which I always love, no legends in it, which I always love, no returning stars, which I always love. Just kind of like build up, whether people are qualifying the Rumble or are in the Rumble. Like, all I know right now is like a handful of people in the Rumble. They haven't really announced more than Cena, Orton, Ziggler, 3MB, Cesaro, Barrett, Miz, Ryback, O'Neal, Young, Kane, Daniel Bryan, I think. I mean, that's all I know about who's in the Rumble. I mean, I presume the Shield are in, but I don't even know about that. And, to me it's interesting. You look at this Rumble, and it's just like, obviously, they're kind of pointing towards Cena winning it, and he's kind of guaranteeing it. But boy, it's like after that promo, which we'll get to, I'm sure. I just don't know. I don't know, man. They're in a weird place going into this pay-per-view when it comes to the Rumble match and kind of building that road to WrestleMania there.
Yeah, it seems like the same thing happened last year where the Rumble was almost an afterthought, and I thought last year was probably one of the weakest Rumbles that they've had. Very disappointing. Yeah, and you would think they would focus more on, the Rumble match itself. They do that Rumble by the numbers video package every year, and they didn't have a chance to, put it on the go-home show for Raw, which I thought was extremely odd. And they put it on their YouTube channel, which a fraction of the people see. Exactly. So it was strange. And then the closing segment on Raw, it was very typical of the Rumble build-up. It wasn't... anyone that's been watching the show for years has seen kind of the same thing many times. And then, of course, there was that promo by John Cena to close Raw, which has been getting a lot of flack online. Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of weird things on that show. I thought the priorities were very off. Vicky and The Rock, it's like, where does that go? Giving Vicky the rub. I mean, it's like I'd rather have seen a whole build with, fat example, Ryback versus Punk with The Rock in Ryback's corner. And, Ryback's a pretty one-dimensional guy, but I think Rock bouncing off him the whole show, it could have actually brought out something in him. And then you have a big schmoz at the end, and then maybe that leads like a Royal Rumble type throwdown because of all the people, to have the Shield run in, then you have all these people running because Shield's pissed off everyone, and you just go off the air with a crazy everyone just throwing down. That's as a off the cuff example. But like doing this like thing with Vicky was just so strange to me, and it's just like they've spent now 3 weeks or so with The Rock and Vicky, maybe 2 weeks, and it's just like where does it go? It's like she's just the GM. This doesn't transfer. It doesn't get anyone over. It doesn't get a new talent over. It doesn't get Dolph Ziggler over or Damian Sandow or Cody Rhodes. It's just Vicky's not going to. She doesn't go to the house shows and make you money. And Rock, I mean, in one night can make anyone. I mean, in one night he did a great thing years ago with Hurricane Helms. He's a guy that could make new stars. And that's kind of what they should be doing. Obviously making their money with Punk, but also on these TV shows, letting him rub up against guys to make guys. I mean, Foley and Rock really, really was good stuff years and years ago. And him rubbing up against those guys was tremendous when he came in 04, in 03, and 02, whether it was doing something with Brock Lesnar and everything. I mean, he just took those guys on the verge and took them next level. And I think Dolph Ziggler is a great example of what could be a great TV program for him between now and WrestleMania. It doesn't have to be a pay-per-view match; it can be, but you could do a long few weeks of that. Because you can balance more than just one thing on a show. I mean, back in the day, Vince versus Austin had a lot of different foils in the mix and side programs and issues and stuff. And I think that's something they can play with. But, the Vic and The Rock just did not do it for me. And I know they really love Vicky there. They love that she's so fearless and has developed a persona there. But I really think they kind of overvalue it. And I honestly think the whole GM role is so passé and done and played to death by now that if it went away, I wouldn't shed one tear.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts on John Cena's promo to end the show? I mean, it's been getting a lot of flack online. A lot of people backstage have been talking about it. It seemed to me like he got lost early on in his promo and was just kind of winging it and never really fully recovered.
I just actually felt like Vince. When Vince did his promo, not to jump around again on that, but when Vince was out there doing that live promo backstage, which was live, it wasn't pre-taped when he was out there with Punk and Heyman backstage, he looked like he just totally lost his way, got flubbed, and even was referring to the wrong person and everything. He looked really bad. He looked really old. He looked borderline disoriented. But going to the Cena stuff, I felt Cena started pretty good, actually. I thought it was kind of cool. Like, he's making it relatable. He's trying to connect with an audience, and he's talking about video game and what his username is. And I'm like, wow, maybe this is actually a cool thing that they can organically now. People jump on this video game and find Cena and everything. And he's building to what his username is. I'm like, well, maybe they have some sort of product placement here, and that's a kind of a cool thing for sponsors and stuff. And then he just hits that skid mark joke. I'm like, oh, that's all we were doing here, and it was just such a sophomore humor, trite promo that is, they talk. I was taught by great promo men. I've been around Dusty Rhodes, Gary Hart, Paul Heyman, and I've been lucky enough to learn what a good money drawing promo is. A promo that will draw money at the gates, at pay-per-view, and what we saw Monday night was not a money-drawing pay-per-view promo. It was just a bizarre, maybe he did lose his way. I also think that just in general, it was indicative of a show that really didn't have a good compass for what their priorities are. Selling people on pay-per-view, selling people on the road to WrestleMania. They didn't even show the WrestleMania sign in the crowd, I don't think. And that years ago, it's like, well, this Sunday we'll find out who's going to be on a WrestleMania. And they'd show the sign, the banner or the graphic. And just a little something, and they didn't do that. It's a very, again, I think it speaks to a bigger issue with WWE. Going back to what I was saying about Vince, kind of seeming old and disoriented, is that you have a guy that's almost 70. He's a grandfather. He's put on an amazing amount of years in terms of on those tires of his, from whatever he's been putting in his body to just the amount of pressure to the, name a guy that's at his age that's traveling 3 to 4 days a week, working 12 hours a day on his feet. And the guy isn't sitting there on a throne just, telling people to, bow down to him. He is in the trenches working, and he works long hours when he gets back, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Lord knows what he's doing on the weekends work-wise. I mean, this guy just rolls up his sleeves and is going, and he's been doing this forever. And there reaches a point in time where I think it's just like, you can talk to any guy that's gets that age, and it's time to start winding down, and it's got to be very hard for Vince. So when you talk about this guy is the creative vision and everything, he micromanages a product, and you look at the product, and it's just like, well, what are their priorities? This looks so weird. This is so confusing. What are they trying to accomplish? Well, I mean, the guy is, it's probably so dizzying to this guy, not to make excuses for Vince, but just to give perspective on where he is and why the product is what it is. It's a lot, man. That's a lot of miles on those tires.
Yeah. And, of course, with this Sunday, we've got the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Usually it's one of my favorite pay-per-views. And I thought last year was disappointing. Hopefully this year they make up for it. But let's run down the card real quick. On the pre-show, Antonio Cesaro defending the United States Championship against The Miz. How do you see that match going down?
Hopefully for Cesaro, he gets a win. It's just a weird place because you're kind of building guys with momentum. It's like, why would you pair him up when you don't really want Miz to lose, given that he somehow is associated with Ric Flair or is a fanboy of Ric Flair's? I'm not even sure where the story is headed right now. When you have undercard guys that are, I love Epico and I love Primo, but I mean, let's be honest, they're jabrones in WWE, and that's a shame, but that's what it is. And they're kind of calling him a Ric Flair mark on TV, and then it's like, well, when heels are speaking the truth, that's a bad thing in booking, but they are. Usually heels should say lies, but when they're speaking the truth and the fans know, it's like, ooh, that's hurt, that's burying The Miz. And so I don't know where they're going with that program. I mean, my feeling is that if it's a YouTube show or a YouTube match, the likelihood is Flair won't be on it because they wouldn't waste Flair on a YouTube match.
Right.
I'm thinking Miz is going to lose, maybe by countout, maybe by pinfall, maybe by not DQ. But I don't think you're going to get him holding the belt at the end of the day. I really hope not. I think Cesaro should continue on this path. I think he's really now starting to gain momentum. And I think they're showcasing how you should showcase a guy at his point. And I mean, I'd like to see him on TV instead of a freaking YouTube match. But they're going in the right direction in general with him. So I'm going to go with, hopefully Cesaro gets the W for all the political reasons I laid out.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that pick. And then you also have Team Hell No defending the tag team titles against Team Rhodes Scholars. Do you see a title change happening here?
Well, I think you can do it. I think you can build this actually to something very interesting coming, all the way to WrestleMania if you did it right. I think it's time for the titles to switch. I think Cody and Damien Sandow deserve them. Story and creatively, I think it's a good moment for a Hell No to maybe get angry or down the road get angry and build to something crazy at WrestleMania. So yeah, I think now or around now is a good time to switch those titles, and I'm all for that.
I thought we were going to disagree on this one, but I agree with you. I think I do see Rhodes and Sandow winning the tag team titles, but the program continuing.
Right.
And then you got Alberto Del Rio defending the World Heavyweight title against the Big Show in a last man standing match.
Yeah, Del Rio I think has been put in such a weird position in how they booked him. It's such a offensive way to get over with fans. It's such a fake way. Hey, look, we're placating. We're playing we're pro Mexican. We have bow ties, mariachi bands. I mean, to me, it's very offensive because having a lot of friends that are Hispanic, that's just like so cartoonish in terms of what their culture really is.
Yeah.
And I think it's a disconnect, and fans are smarter than that. I think fans, they're like, oh, so we're going to have a mariachi band? I mean, okay, he's one of us. I think it's offensive, and that's not going to help at all. And I think he's had first of all, he turned really in a very bizarre way, and there was no build and there was no setup for it. A Big Show, this is like a match like who's the heel really for a lot of fans still, I think. And this should be a match given where it's taking place out in Phoenix, that it should be a good crowd that's pro Del Rio, but I just don't think he's very over right now as a babyface, and he's a champion. I mean, it speaks to why do we have two world titles? It really doesn't. I don't think it's really making the belt isn't making the man, and the man isn't making the belt, and that's not a good thing. I expect Del Rio to win, but I mean, like if he doesn't win, I think it's also it's an indication that the office really is just kind of befuddled and not sure what to do with Del Rio, and not a good sign for his 2013. But I really don't know. You close your eyes and you open them on WrestleMania. What is he doing on WrestleMania as champion? I mean, it's just nothing really is appealing to me right now. I mean, maybe they can heat him up, and I hope they do, but there's a lot of ways to do it. But right now, I don't know. I mean, this is one of those matches of great indifference to me, but it'll also be an interesting match for fans when they watch this to see if the office continues to have faith and confidence in building Del Rio as a champion, or do they just say, let's just go to Del Rio and the Big Show and Ryback at WrestleMania. I mean, I could see them doing that and putting Ryback more predominantly on SmackDown as a secondary champion, and trying to create some steam there because he is really slowed down.
Yeah. I think that Del Rio will retain just because I do think it's too soon, but I do think they've pulled the trigger way too quickly on having Del Rio win the title. They haven't established him as a babyface.
Right.
You can see half the time the crowd doesn't know how to react when he comes out. It just seems so forced that you can tell it's kind of doomed from the start. It's hard to turn things like that around during a title reign. But I don't see them pulling the trigger that quickly. Otherwise, it really kind of buries him. But
it does.
And do you see? I know this seems to be brought up every pay-per-view, but do you see Ziggler cashing in or?
I don't know if Ziggler will ever cash in. I mean, it's funny we're talking about, Miz and Flair. I mean, originally it was going to be Flair and Ziggler as a team, as a package duo, and they went in a different direction when they decided AJ was going to be with Ziggler. I don't know what you do with Ziggler right now. It's like I almost wonder if he'd be better off as a face because I don't know if the AJ thing's really clicking as like I thought it would. I don't know. Like I just Ziggler's a weird guy because I felt he had a little bit of momentum for like a half a day, and then they just keep just spilling more jobs on him, and it hurts him, and he has very little credibility. I mean, guys that have credibility give him wins, even if you're pulling trunks, if you're poking eyes, if you're being shady, that's fine. But they just don't seem invested in that Money in the Bank stipulation when it comes to him. They haven't even teased it, feels like. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I've missed something. It doesn't feel like they've teased it in a while. They went through a period where they definitely were teasing it. Now it seems like it's not even a topic that they're discussing.
Yeah, it almost seems strange that he's in the Royal Rumble since he's already got a world title shot.
It's redundant. Like, what's insurance policy for something you don't need? It's very odd.
I mean, I guess he does get the opportunity to challenge for the WWE title, but
well, I think he's gonna be the workhorse in the Rumble. I mean, like you have every year or so, whether it's Shawn Michaels doing fish out of water spots where he's flopping and flipping and still staying in, or they've had a million of them over years. I remember as a kid watching Rick the Model Martel doing that, and a few years later you saw was the '91 Rumble Ric Flair doing it. So you need a guy that's gonna go 50 minutes or something, and he's clearly a guy that can do that. I don't foresee. God, hopefully we don't see the Miz doing that, or Heath Slater or something like that, or but we'll see. I think he's a guy that you need to fill that out with 30 guys, and you need guys that are going to be over in that Rumble. I mean, the thing that's key ingredient to the Rumble is the entrances. You have that music hit, and you know that guy's coming out, and you get a good pop, and he does 3 minutes or it's 30 minutes, whatever it's going to be. But it's that's a big part of the Royal Rumble is who's going to be the 30th man, and then you hear the music, and who got number one, and that's something they didn't play up on the show at all either. It's like I loved back in the day when they used to have the tumbler and you'd pick out your number and either they'd reveal it or not, or $1 Million Man bought someone else's number. I mean, all that cool stuff because they had great characters you knew their motivations and they had so much to play with. But now they're all so flat, one-dimensional guys, Sheamus and Ziggler and stuff, that you just don't get that kind of stuff. But they're also not creating those situations. But whether it was I mean, there's a moment in this Rumble. If they do it where Daniel Bryan and Kane draw bad example number 5 and 6 and they're the only ones in there and they have to look at each other and they're going to fight each other and they do. I mean, years ago when Hawk and Animal were to do that, or a Smash and Axe or Crush were to do that, it was really cool. Now it's not as special, but there's cool moments they can have in this Rumble. Last year's Royal Rumble I thought was very uninspiring, was very by the numbers. Actually, it wasn't by the numbers. It was boring. By the numbers would indicate that, basic standard stuff. It was so unspectacularly boring that I really hope that they put in some high spots and some cool moments in this Rumble. And I think, having guys like Fit Finlay back in the mix as an agent does help that because he's a very creative agent in terms of laying out spots and matches and finishes. So hopefully we get some good stuff in this year's Rumble.
Yeah, I think if they do another Cold Rumble, they're going to risk turning it into a Survivor Series where they've kind of turned fans away from what is usually one of the highlights of the year.
Right, absolutely.
And who do you see winning this year?
Well, I mean, I could see two guys. John Cena is the obvious one that Ray Charles could see, and he's dead and was blind. And the other one is Ryback because he needs to be showcased in some considerable fashion. If you want to keep on the Ryback train, which I think it's better to have guys that are somewhat over than not. But he really lost steam for me when I saw him in Brooklyn. I wasn't there live, but I saw the pay-per-view, and you could see the New York crowds just weren't taken to him. That's always been an interesting indicator for in wrestling. How does the New York market take to the next big guy or not? And you kind of can figure out the trajectory. It's pretty much worked. Not for everyone, but it's worked. And they didn't take to him, and I've seen he's just lost steam because of how he's booked. But if he wins the Rumble, or he has a thing where he breaks the record for most eliminations or something, and then you got a guy that's got something, and maybe you can create a feud because he eliminated this guy that was so close to winning the Rumble, and that guy comes back and costs him the Rumble, a few moments later. So you can build something moving forward now. I think he needs to get the hell away from the Shield. I mean, it's not in either their best interest to keep them together. You need the Shield to continue to move up. You need Ryback to eat up, guys and win. And I think it's now time to kind of split them, and this would be the ideal moment to do that.
Yeah, I kind of see the same thing. Unless they do something completely out of the blue, like having a Brock Lesnar enter, which from what I've been hearing isn't in the plans, and it would be a weird decision to do and not hype his appearance ahead of time. But yeah, I do see them going with John Cena and going with what had been originally planned was Cena against The Rock 2 at WrestleMania. Even though I think there's other things that are more interesting, but that kind of seems the way that they're going. And that leads us into the world champion, the WWE Championship match with CM Punk and The Rock. What do you see happening here?
Yeah, man. We laid out the finishes, the dramatic finishes a few weeks ago. Whether it's Shield comes out, they get destroyed. Heyman takes a bump, turn around, another rock bottom on Punk. Lights go out, lights come back on, and Brock's in there, and he just destroys him. And then Punk wins, or you basically, I think you're gonna have some sort of run-in. I think I think what's gonna ultimately happen is you're gonna see Maddox come in, get killed, turn around, 1, 2, 3, maybe a near fall on Rock, but he'll kick out. He rock bottoms Punk. Shield comes out, and I don't know how they get out around that, but maybe he somehow was you do the old Three Stooges thing. They collide, boom, 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 throw them out, turn around, rock bottom, Punk, 1, 2, 3. I do think Rock needs to win the title. I think it's now. If anything, it really feels like Punk now has kind of went from having some momentum as the champion to kind of. I felt with his promo the other night, he kind of stalled out. I didn't enjoy the promo. I thought it was kind of boring and kind of like turn the channel type heat to me. He was very slow and methodical and listened to my words, but it really was boring to me. I've heard that rhetoric before. He wasn't selling me. That wasn't to me a money promo. And I think the hype about him having the title for 364 and a half days or whatever it is has died a bit. And I think that's something they really should have played up every week. Just the announcers, not like Goldberg and his undefeated streak. I mean, it's something they just have to do on the announcers, not like Punk has to go out there and Heyman has to have a big card saying 368 days or whatever. But something they should really play up every show, every which way, even if he's not on the show, because he's still the champion, even if he's not defending it. And so I think if they made it, it doesn't feel like a great collision course. It just feels kind of like you book these two and they're going to face, and there might be a few tricks up Punk's sleeve, but I don't feel like it's a great collision course. I don't feel the anticipation like I thought I would. Again, keeping Rock outside the building the whole night in a weird, strange way didn't really feel like it really was heat that was going on to Punk. It just felt kind of like, oh, here's the roadblock, and that's it. There wasn't really like, oh, you're feeling denied. That CM Punk denied you Rock, or he denied the audience at home Rock that night. And we all saw the Rock. He was just doing a shtick outside with some local indie wrestlers. So I just didn't. I don't feel like there's a lot of heat, really. And then they did the angle where he beat him up and everything, and I felt Rock did a great job with it, but I don't know. I just felt like it was a little too late. Yeah,
I kind of think I thought the build-up would have been a little better. I was surprised that the feud between them has cooled off a little bit, but
Honestly, I would have done that. I would have done that angle last week and replayed it and had Punk gloating and proving that this guy is not 100%. He has a punctured lung. He has internal injuries, and this guy maybe shouldn't even wrestle me. Can he get a clear to wrestle or something like that? And I would have, because that would have given you 2 weeks to promote this heat. And now you just have a few shows that I don't know how many people watch SmackDown and the main event and everything, but that could have been promoted. I always believe in not doing the heat on the go-home show because of that reason, because you can promote it, because you can have your heel gloating the next week, because you can then spread doubt about the guy that's challenging. That builds the drama. To me, it's like to go on the heat, and it kind of feels like, okay, then we know The Rock is going to come and beat him. He's got to go even Steven according to WWE booking today.
Yeah, and that's been one of the issues, I think, is it seems like they just kind of book on the fly, the day of the show or, the weekend before the show, as opposed to really having a lot of long-term planning, not necessarily on who's going to win or who's going to lose, but how to get there.
Yes.
And, when you were with WWE and you guys would book the Rumble, how far in advance did you guys, kind of know who was going to win and kind of build towards it and lay it out?
Well, sometimes we'd know months and months and months in advance. Other times we wouldn't know until that weekend or the week or so before. It depended on the year. 05, you had a great idea of what you were doing. 06, it came down to either it was going to be, I believe, Hunter or Ray winning, and obviously most people were pushing for Hunter. Very few people were pushing for Ray, but the right guy was able to get that through and into the end zone, and that was Pat Patterson. Guys that were opposed to him and wanted other guys to win. I mean, Hunter obviously wanted himself to win. Dusty wanted, I think, Hunter to win. Most of the writing team, Steph, wanted Hunter to win. Pat Patterson, Bruce Pritchard, and myself wanted Ray to win, and obviously Pat had the most influence because he's Pat Patterson, and really was the most influential in getting that decision and getting Ray over into the Rumble. But that was something that came down to the last 10 days, and even then Vince wasn't. Why are we giving this guy the Rumble when he's not going to win at WrestleMania? And we really wanted Ray to win at WrestleMania that year, so we were just like, well, we don't have to go that direction. We'd like to, but it's a really unique story with the smallest guy winning the biggest match of the year, kind of thing in terms of numbers. And so finally we convinced Vince of that, and then step 1, step 2, step 3, all the way to WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. But the Rumbles. Typically, you need to have a great idea of who's going to win in advance because you're laying out the spots about 2-3 weeks in advance, and that's changed over the years. I mean, when I was there, the standard thing was to have about 3 weeks out of the Rumble, you would have Michael Hayes, Pat Patterson, who created the Royal Rumble concept, and Shane McMahon go into a hotel in Stamford, a suite, get a ton of beer, a ton of food, and just do a marathon session and just lay out everything over the course of a day or two, and probably trash the whole hotel. I'm just joking, but they'd go out and come back and kind of they'd have all these notes, stained with buffalo wings and shit. But they pitch it to Vince or the creative team, and we'd listen and give our our feedback. But most of the time, it was really good stuff. But little tweaks and adjustments would always be made by Vince or whoever, or even the guys that were pitching it, or they'd have questions for us, what they could do and this and that. And obviously Shane is no longer with the company now, and I understand primarily Michael Hayes is coming up with a lot of this stuff. Pat Patterson kind of gives some assistance, and they kind of go from there. So that's how it's changed from when I was there to today. And Hunter has a bigger hand in it now, much bigger hand. But Michael will work out kind of the A to B to C, and Hunter will kind of give him some tweaks and some cool ideas, and that's hopefully going to go a lot better this year than it did in 2012.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
It was such a flat. I mean, I remember having a lot of friends over for the first time in a long time. We all got Royal Rumble fever last year. We were watching it, and we're all just like, oh, I remember this being a lot more fun when we were younger. Yeah,
I almost felt bad having people over last year because it's almost like when you sell them on the Rumble, they expect a bunch of surprises and just more effort. I feel overall, and it was definitely a flat show.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Well, we'll definitely take a look at how this year's Rumble panned out next week. Court, what do you have going on with MLW?
We got a new show out there that just dropped, MLW Radio, and you can follow us at MLW Wrestling, 2 W's, or me at Court Bauer, COURTBAUER on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, facebook.com/Major League Wrestling, and we have a show with Conan and myself talking about our experiences with Dusty Rhodes. I share a story about John Cena sending off a certain member of the production team on a pool table with a little romancing after hours at a bar. We definitely burned some bridges on this week's show, so if you like, check it out. It's a fun, crazy show. In fact, there's a Road Wild story about Juventud and a girl and a WCW ring announcer, and I'm just going to leave it at that because this is a PG show. Don't want to offend anyone, but it's a crazy show. Check it out, MLW.com, or search iTunes MLW Radio.
Well, thanks again, Court, and that does it for this week. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and make sure to join us again next week.